Hey there, so today I'm going to talk about how milkshakes destroyed a feminist group. And no, I'm not talking about body-positive women fighting over milkshakes. I'm talking about Make Mine Milkshake, which was a 2017 hashtag campaign centered around Heather Antos. Essentially, what it did is it decried those terrible, terrible wrong thinkers within the comic book industry that decided they would go out and in the midst of 93 positive comments, they would put 4 negative comments. Now, you'll see from this article that 4 negative comments, that stuff can't be abided. But the problem was within this that this was white feminism. And apparently, that's cancer. Apparently, it erases black women and women of color. Apparently, those aren't the same thing. Why? Don't really know. I'll probably ask that again. But still, this is going to destroy an organization. It's amazing to see how something that could be looked at as a victory still isn't a victory when you deal with identity politics. When you look at the progressive stack, it wasn't progressive enough. And that's the amazing thing within this. There are always hurdles within hurdles, and even when people are succeeding, it's like they have a boulder tied to their leg. But anyhow, let's get into this article, and then there is an associated article, because like I said, this will destroy it. 600 members and one person saying this destroys a feminist community. Wow. How White Feminism Drove Me Out of the Valkyries by Jasmine Joyner. White feminism affects every aspect of my life on a daily basis as a black femme woman of America, but not so much as my experience with it within the comic industry. I own and operate Visionary Comics, a comic shop in California. I was the first black woman on the West Coast to open a comic retail store. As a black woman in the industry, I have faced my share of harassment. Now check out what's considered harassment there. Continuing, I have been called SJW trash and racial slurs. I have had customers smear my character on the internet and spread lies about me in secret Facebook groups. Comics isn't for the faint of heart if you are a black woman. Now you'll notice a theme that will pop up here, and it's called criticism. Criticism and having any type of viewpoint, not agreeing with this person's viewpoint, it is going to not only be an assault on that person, but it's an assault on black women / women of color. I mean, that is going to be pretty much the theme. It showcases how identity can be used as a bludgeon. So check this out. Continuing. So when I heard about the Valkyries, I was excited to have a network of women to commiserate with about the day-to-day chaos that is within the direct market in an industry that is sexist as hell. Within a few months of opening my shop, I was invited by a friend of a friend to join them. The Valkyries are a group of women, mostly white, as I learned later, who work in, own, or manage comic retail stores. They have a Facebook group, which I joined, where they discuss tips and events and share horror stories of customers from hell and dude bros mansplaining the importance of Frank Miller's Dark Knight in excruciating detail. Not that exactly, but you catch my drift. Isn't it fun to know that shop owners sit around and complain about consumers that are infatuated with the products they sell? Oh, you know, that dude bro, he mansplained the importance of Frank Miller's Dark Knight. I mean, can you imagine that mentality? I can, but, you know, I wish people would throw that out there right in the forefront so people understand that when you shop here, this is the kind of experience that you get. But anyway, continuing, I instantly noticed a lot of the Valkyries were white women. Few were black women or women of color. Again, I don't understand that. How are black women not women of color? I mean, we get our own classification there, basically to separate it. But then again, I think that's the person that's speaking. You know, the person is seeing themselves as black women, so they separate this category. That way, you know, you have 2 classifications that are offended, but the person, it's almost like listening to Venom talk about themselves in the third person. I feel like this is a discussion in the third person. But continuing, my issue with the group started early. In fact, right when I started interacting attracting them. Right through the door, there was already a problem. There would be a call out in the group for ideas or events to get more customers in the door. I would comment with some of my what some of my shop was doing, and I would get immediately bombarded with criticisms. Oh no, can't have criticism. You see a theme starting here? Got criticism about my idea. Oh, it's terrible. And you'll see that this makes it not a safe space later. I mean, that language is utilized. So continuing, it happened with every post I commented on. So I stopped commenting altogether. I would just watch from the sidelines. It wasn't until early this year that I decided to leave the group altogether. Now within this too, either you have terrible ideas or you're dealing with people that always see the negative in something. I mean, when you look at that, maybe that says that your association with groups like this, yeah, maybe groups like that are focused on the negative. Maybe they're focused on pushing something down. It's really hard to tell with this because taking sides within it, it's like picking the lesser of something that seems really wrong when you listen to these folks out there. The way that they approach. I would encourage you to look up the Valkyries. That way you can see who I'm talking about there versus looking up other stuff with this person. Continuing though, the inciting incident was Make Mine Milkshake. In June of 2017, Heather Antos, a Marvel Comics editor and a white woman, tweeted a photo of her and her female coworkers going out and getting milkshakes, only for an innocuous post to receive hate and vicious DMs from Marvel fanboys accusing her of politicizing comic books and being the reason for the decline of the quality of stories being told by the publisher, basically saying women editing books are the reason Marvel stories are garbage. Now we know that that is not the way that came across. 93 positive comments, 4 negative comments saying you are the problem with comics now. I mean, when you look at some of the people that are associated there, you can tell that they don't have the experience that editorial should. I mean, when you see what comes out of editorial, what makes it past, and you see everything that is out there associated, you can draw inferences from it. Are some of the inferences seemingly unfair? Well, that's up to you to look at. But it's amazing that 4 comments, 4 of them started a hashtag campaign. But continuing, an outpouring of support came from all over the industry on different social media platforms. Twitter users created a hashtag #MakeMineMilkshake in solidarity with Heather Antos. Women and creators in the comic industry posted pictures of themselves drinking milkshakes. Of course, because activism and drinking milkshakes, Continuing, the hashtag went viral and hundreds of women and men participated. Even Marvel and DC tweeted in support of the hashtag, affirming their support of women within the industry. I believe what happened to Antos was awful, and no one deserves to be harassed for drinking a milkshake with their friends. It's amazing that the words harassment, but then again, even having this is erasure. So when you look at the wording, consider exactly how this is put together and consider who is calling what, like erasure or harassment. That wording there is very, very telling. But continuing, the problem with the resounding response to her harassment is black women and women of color in comics get harassed and hassled and harassed on a daily basis. Yet no one makes a hashtag for them. No one fights for them when the comic dude bros go after their stories or their art. I mean, look at this. This is very, very telling because, it wasn't about, what I wanted. Therefore, that's a problem. This thing is problematic because of white feminism. So it's because of this lack of support of black women and women of color in comics that I didn't want to participate in the hashtag. So you only want a specific brand of activism. Very telling there. So the Valkyries were mobilizing their troops. Now this right here is going to cause a problem. You'll notice it right here. This article, like I said, is the destruction of something because one person didn't want to mobilize and guzzle down the milkshakes. But continuing, they were posting picture after picture of themselves drinking milkshakes for Heather Antos, all the while ignoring the valid conversations about the women of color who felt that this protest was the embodiment of white feminism. So, like I said, it's not feminist enough. It's not progressive enough. That's amazing there. So continuing, I brought this up with one of the Valkyrie founders, the woman who had recruited me. Now it's recruitment there. Either we're putting together a football team or we're the CI freaking A. I mean, think about that. Continuing, I told her how insensitive it was for them to blindly follow this hashtag without realizing that it erases the black women and women of color who get harassed in comics every day without a hashtag or a horde of white women coming to their rescue. So you're telling me that you need a horde of white women to come to your rescue. A horde of white women. I mean, think about that. That is an amazing statement. This whole statement here has so many things within it. The erasure of black women and women of color, because the hashtag there, it didn't fit this person's narrative of what it should be. Continuing, she seemed to understand, especially after I said that as a black woman, the Valkyries didn't seem to be a safe space. You see the safe space for my voice. I told her that I might leave the group. She admitted to me that the Valkyries admin team was completely white and the group was predominantly white as well. I saved my decision for the next day. I wanted a night to think about it. The next day I decided to leave. The same admin had taken our conversation and my grievance with the group and turned it into an article published on a large comic website. She was praised for writing about the exact concerns I brought to her. So when she writes this article, you know what the problem is? It's the same thing that you see with the Heather Antos hashtag. It wasn't about the person that is writing this. She took her words and put it together instead of giving her the spotlight. So it's amazing when you see this. Oh, the concerns there? Oh, they're valid, I guess, but, the right person didn't say them. It's much like the Make Mine Milkshake thing. Oh, well, yeah, we need this, but the caveat there, not about the right person. You hear the me within the progressive stack, and, well, it's really telling. But continuing, I asked to leave the group immediately after I read the piece. It felt like my experiences and concern were used for a personal gain. Instead of encouraging or helping a woman of color have the opportunity to speak about the issue, she chose to do it herself. See, there you go. Oh, instead of helping me have the power to have that pulpit, well, she pulled up the lictum and gave the lecture herself. Isn't that terrible? Very telling again. Continuing, though, the comments after the piece were a mix of white women, and I know I mixed a couple of white women back here, but, well, praising the author and telling each other how they needed to do better, with the irony of the dialogue taking place in a predominantly white space seemingly lost on them. Most of the space I work within the comic industry, whether it be retail or journalism, are predominantly white spaces. When you think about that too, so they have their own shop. Is that a white space? I mean, they talk about predominantly working in a white space. If they own their own shop, and they work in their shop, how is that a white space? I'm kind of confused. Are they saying since comics, it's a write-off as a white space, accordingly their comic shops somehow is that too? I'm really confused by that idea. But continuing, navigating this world is like tripping through a minefield. Yeah, apparently. You use the wrong hashtag, and it doesn't talk about the right thing. Apparently it will destroy your group. Or if you talk about the issues, but you quote unquote co-opt those issues. Yeah. Anyway, continuing. After my experience with the Valkyries and Make Mine Milkshakes, I have a hard time figuring out who is the true ally. So you have to be a true ally in that. I mean, that is a very telling thing, too. It's not about feminism. It's about being an ally to other people, namely, the dogma of intersectionality. Finishing this, white feminism is something that probably won't leave comics anytime soon. White feminism, not unless we prioritize black women and women of color into every facet of the comic industry. Now, this was written, and within a couple of weeks, you had the fallout. Bam! Women's comic book retail group, the Valkyries, disbands following diversity crisis. Now, this was reported by Bleeding Cool, and it did not take long for this stuff to fall apart. Now, the admin team, they gave an announcement for that. They talked about how they were founded within 2013, how they come together from 10 to 600, but they had stagnant leadership. And, when they were doing all of this, they were talking about advocating for positive, more inclusive positive change. They take responsibility for allowing the group to fail its members, particularly people of color and otherwise marginalized members, because again, they supported a hashtag, but it wasn't the hashtag that one individual wanted within something. They also talk about within this that the people that answer the calls to be in charge, to be part of group administration and on, it had been white women. It had not been other people. It had been either largely unanswered or it was answered exclusively by white women, and that, of course, addressed or caused problems that didn't allow the addressing of marginalized issues. It's amazing to see, again, how this kind of stuff, rather than fix something, rather than really being addressed in there or ignored because you're going out and you're still addressing an issue, but apparently you're not addressing it well enough. I looked at this kind of stuff. I looked at the announcement here. Well, I wasn't really surprised by it, but at the same time, when I saw this, I was taken aback by what this says about where feminist groups are. They can't be progressive enough sometimes, and this will dismantle the entirety of the thing. 600 members destroyed by one member. Final thoughts? This is an object lesson. When you look at this, this is a lesson in exactly where this type of activism sets, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse with that because feminism is not about women. It is not about empowerment of women. It is about intersectionality, and it is about the silencing of specific voices. It was always about the silencing of voices before, but, there was a good lockstep and it worked out. Now you're actually seeing the reality of that there is the silencing of women within feminism. This kind of stuff. You are not intersectional enough. You're not going to go out and utilize the right hashtag, because not utilizing the right hashtag, that is the erasure of black women and women of color. Think about that. A lot of this says me, 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 and it says it very, very loud, and it shows what kind of destructive element it is. But anyhow, you tell me what you think about this stuff. Also, if you like this kind of content, please consider supporting the channel. I've talked about how my computer pretty much was eaten by lightning. Not anyone's fault, but, well, if you want to help out, I definitely appreciate that. There are links within the description. There's a Patreon link, PayPal link, and other options. Also, liking, subscribing, and on, I definitely appreciate that. And we are looking down the barrel of 9,000 subscribers pretty soon, so I definitely appreciate it. But above all, definitely tell me what you think about this article. I am curious where people sit with this, and thank you for tuning in.